Warm greetings. Today is Saturday, August 8, 2026. This is meteorologist Ruben Garcia. At the time of recording this video, it is 1:30 in the afternoon, local time, in the Eastern Caribbean, where we have already begun closely monitoring some tropical waves that are emerging from Africa. And this morning, the National Hurricane Center marked an area in the tropical Atlantic with a low probability of tropical cyclone development during the next 7 days. So interests in the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic should remain attentive to the National Hurricane Center's tropical weather outlook, but for the moment there are no imminent threats from a tropical cyclone. As you can see in the visible satellite animation, the Atlantic remains fairly quiet. In fact, we have an area with high concentrations of Saharan dust moving across the tropical Atlantic that, beginning tomorrow, will be deteriorating air quality. But as I mentioned in yesterday's video, Saharan dust concentrations will be decreasing, and this, in combination with somewhat more favorable conditions generated by a Kelvin wave, will open the opportunity for some tropical waves to acquire some organization. However, as you will see in the next few minutes, development probabilities currently remain low, since in approximately 7 days the tropical waves will be encountering strong wind shear moving from the Caribbean toward the tropical Atlantic. The first tropical wave that we will be monitoring is currently located south of the Cabo Verde Islands, and although it has not been marked by the National Hurricane Center, some models keep it fairly strong as it moves toward the southern islands of the Lesser Antilles. But on Tuesday, a stronger tropical wave is expected to emerge from Africa, and this is the one that currently appears to have the best chances of development. This is why the National Hurricane Center has marked this area with a 20% chance of development during the next 7 days. This means that the probability of development currently remains low, and the new update will be issued shortly at 2 in the afternoon. Now let's take a look at the latest runs of the global models. The American model, in the midday run and for Wednesday, has the first tropical wave somewhat strong, acquiring some tropical cyclone organization as it moves westward. In fact, on Thursday it perhaps develops a tropical depression. And remember that this first tropical wave is the one currently located south of the Cabo Verde Islands and not the one that has been marked by the National Hurricane Center. I mention this because there is a possibility that the National Hurricane Center may later mark another area, since there are 2 tropical waves that we will be monitoring. And notice that the American model, between Tuesday and Wednesday, has the second tropical wave passing south of the Cabo Verde Islands. Then, by next weekend, between Saturday and Sunday, the American model has the first tropical wave crossing just north of Trinidad and Tobago and south of Barbados, potentially bringing rainfall activity that will be very welcome. However, it keeps the system fairly weak because it will be battling strong wind shear. While in about 7 days and halfway between the Caribbean and Africa, it has the second tropical wave potentially developing into a tropical depression or tropical storm as it moves west-northwestward. This second tropical wave, well into the long range, promises to bring an increase in moisture to portions of the northern Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico. Now, let's look at the European model projection. This model does not develop the first tropical wave. However, it does show some type of organization of the tropical wave that will emerge next Tuesday, and in approximately 5 to 6 days it potentially develops a tropical depression as it moves west-northwestward. And in the case of the German model, it also has the first tropical wave strong as it passes through the Lesser Antilles in approximately 6 to 7 days, and develops a tropical depression or tropical storm from the second wave that will emerge between Monday and Tuesday. And the Canadian model develops both tropical waves. Notice that by the middle of the week it potentially has 2 tropical depressions in the tropical Atlantic. Now, as I already mentioned, as the first tropical wave moves along, regardless of whether it manages to develop or not, it is anticipated that once it reaches the Lesser Antilles, it will be affected by wind shear, and we can see this in this graphic, where the orange color represents strong wind shear moving from the Caribbean Sea toward the tropical Atlantic. And this wind shear should keep weak or dissipate any cyclone that attempts to form in the Atlantic and approaches the Caribbean. So at least this is good news because it is very likely that any tropical depression or tropical storm that forms should eventually remain weak, especially if it reaches the Eastern Caribbean region. So for the moment we are definitely not talking about a strong system. But if it develops, it will probably remain a tropical depression or tropical storm. We can see this evolution in the European model ensemble members. Between 10 and 15% of them develop the first tropical wave, but once it moves over the Lesser Antilles, they dissipate it due to the wind shear. And in approximately 5 to 6 days most of them do develop a tropical depression from the second wave, which was marked by the National Hurricane Center at 8 in the morning. And we see the same thing in the Google DeepMind model run, where it keeps the first tropical wave somewhat weak, and if it reaches the Caribbean as a tropical depression or tropical storm, it dissipates it in approximately 6 to 7 days, and some members of this model develop the second tropical wave moving west-northwestward, passing near or just northeast of the Caribbean. Of course, particularly with the second tropical wave, it is still too early to know precisely how far from or how close to the Caribbean it could pass. And the American model ensemble members also show the possible development of a tropical depression associated with the first wave, but then dissipate it once it crosses over the Lesser Antilles in approximately 7 days, and they also have the second tropical wave developing into a tropical depression as it moves west-northwestward. As I mentioned yesterday, we will continue to closely monitor them, especially given the possibility that both tropical waves could bring an increase in rainfall to the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. At least the long-range projections from the American model forecast between 2 and 4 inches of accumulated rainfall for the southern half of the Lesser Antilles during the next 10 days. Meanwhile, for the northern islands of the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, between 1 and 2 inches. However, remember that these very long-range projections will be changing as the system evolves, so we still do not know exactly how much rainfall both tropical waves could produce, but they will definitely increase the chances of rain in about 7 to 10 days. So here at Hurricane Info, I will continue calmly monitoring these tropical waves, and again, for the moment there is no reason to worry, only to remain vigilant, as is typical during hurricane season. And if you want to stay informed about this event and throughout the rest of the season, I invite you to like this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so that you receive notifications when I record new videos. I hope everyone has an excellent Saturday. Tomorrow I will update you with a new video.